Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan with IGN, and I'm here with
Tate Phoebe.
And welcome to the final part of our Hearthstone Blackrock Mountain adventure card set preview analysis extravaganza is what we've termed it now, lovingly. So in this part, we're just going to go over all the neutral cards. There are 12 of them in total, and these cards, of course, can be used by any class, period. So the first one we're going to start out with, we're actually going to work our way from the bottom of the curve to the top of the curve, and we're going to start out with the 1 mana card, Dragon Egg. Reminiscent of Nerubian Egg, but kind of more flavorful in the sense, or more appropriate in the sense that it can be triggered by warrior abilities or any kind of damage. And of course, with that whole incentive of like minions dying and then reduced costs, I think this fits in nicely along with Nerubian Egg. But of course, the best case scenario for this is Cruel Taskmaster, and then you trade it. Because you're damaging it once, trigger the effect, slam it into something else, get the effect again, and you've made an awesome trade, and you're now 2/1 whelps richer.
I think this card sucks so bad.
I mean,
you can think of it like a death rattle to get the whelps. Actually, the Cruel Taskmaster play, that seems like the dream with this card.
Nerubian Egg is better.
Nerubian Egg is way better. Also, like the only class that could even get theoretically more than 2 whelps is Priest.
Right.
Power Word Shield gives it a little bit more. But, I mean, that Cruel Taskmaster play actually is really smart. I like that a lot. I hadn't thought of that when I decided that this was one of the worst cards in the expansion. But I'm still not super excited about it.
Yeah, I think the Cruel Taskmaster is better used on a Nerubian Egg. And this is kind of hinting at that, but Nerubian Egg was kind of meta-defining in Axaramus, and it was certainly a card that everybody was looking forward to. This one, not so much.
Yeah, there's not much benefit to having dragons on the board. It's all based on dragons in your hand.
That's true.
So
right.
I don't see how getting the whelps is gonna help a dragon theme deck.
All right, so let's jump up to the Blackwing Technician. You actually like this card a lot. I am not so sold on it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's the Tinkertown Technician of the Dragon world. So if you're building a dragon deck, I think this is an auto-include in most scenarios because a 3 health, 3 attack, 5 health minion for 3 mana, that doesn't exist in the game today. It's a good example of the power creep that's kind of happening with the expansion. But Tinkertown has 8 stats. That has 8 stats. Tinkertown does give you the spare part, which is beneficial.
And the spare part is kind of a synergy that is very central to Max as well as Mana Worm, and there are obvious synergies here, and this is a really good example of how the kind of like, you know, the mech deck was almost the first, kind of like Murlocs, the first theme or faction that they really pushed, and it worked. It straight up just worked in the meta. Mech Mage is still a thing, will continue to be a thing, but this kind of demonstrates the fact that, like, yes, there are some cool cards that interact with dragons, but there really isn't that, like, central synergy that we saw with mechs. But again, this is just an adventure that was an entire expansion. So yeah, I agree this card is certainly not bad. Let's move on to Hungry Dragon, a card that I think, you know, is obviously part of the dragon archetype, but isn't necessarily limited or tied to having it be in a dragon deck. And we talked about this card at some length in our top 5 picks for the most powerful card. This was my number 4 pick, and it was almost on your list, but you got cold feet at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. 5/6 for 4 mana. That's just huge. Not many cards deal with that effectively. You gotta hope you get a good 1-drop when the opponent plays this. The only thing I think that this card has to worry about is aggro decks. Fueling their board with another 1-cost minion might just be damage where this doesn't have taunt, it doesn't prevent the aggro from happening, so you drop the Hungry Dragon, but then they're just going right past you and hitting your face.
Totally.
So.
And then my counterpoint to that during the top 5 video was that I think this can be included in aggro decks. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but it's certainly low enough on the mana curve and has a big enough butt and face totally wreck, I think. And then at that point, summoning a 1-cost minion for your opponent, not the worst thing, because hopefully you've maintained board control in that early game. Are there better 4-drops for aggro? Possibly, but I think this one is certainly among the top picks.
Yeah, everything that could counter Zoo only makes it stronger.
That is the absolute truth of Hearthstone, especially when it comes to adventures. Okay, so Drakenkin Sorcerer is a 4-cost 3/3, and this is an effect that has been around in Magic for a very long time, and to my knowledge has actually not been in Hearthstone yet. But basically, when you target it with any spell, it gets a heroic trigger, or aka +1/+1. And the thing I like about this card is it's a card that works really well with kind of a new player combo that isn't bad. I'm not hating on it by any means, but certainly Blessing of Might and then just Blessing of Kings. I think this card turns this card into something stupid like a 12-17 or something. I don't really remember exactly what it is. Also, Velen's Chosen, a card that saw a little bit of play at some point in kind of a mid-range priest that didn't really work out after GVG launched. Also a great card that turns this into a 5/9? No. Something like that.
It turns it into a 6, I believe it's a 6/9.
Right, okay.
Or 6/10, actually. I like this card. I really liked it when I first saw it. Then I started to think about it, and I'm not sure I like it as much anymore. Only because the spells needing to target it. So you got to think of it as the full cost of creating the minion that you're investing in. So if you do invest this and a Velen's Chosen into a single minion, it ties into the huge buff 1 minion decks where if the opponent removes it, that's a loss in value. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But for trading up, you place this on turn 4. It's almost a must remove because it'll trade up with anything on turn 5 if you have spells in your hand. So
and it's worth noting that this does synergize with spare part cards. And you can kind of spam a whole bunch on this and give it +1/+1 in addition to the other effects the spare part is giving. And finally, there was one more point I wanted to make.
It's a dragon.
It's a dragon. That's true. That was not the point. Man. But I will not remember it, so we'll move on. Maybe I'll put it in text right here in a single flash frame. There it was. Okay. Grim Patron. Card that I love the idea of, but in practice, it's just total crap.
Is there any class this can work for besides Warrior? I mean, I guess maybe Druid if you're throwing some Blessing or whatever.
Theoretically, you could
taunt cards on
theoretically, you can make it work just by trading it with 1/3s or 1/1s or something. But certainly the dream is Commanding Shout, Bouncing Blade, which gives you 7 3/1s. But then you can't attack that turn, so they'll probably just get swiped or what have you. But a cool card, a lot of combo potential. I would love to eat my words on this card and see somebody use it to maximum effect. I just don't think that's really going to happen.
Yeah, Warrior, there's certainly a lot of synergy in that class. But yeah, I would love to see this make play.
Sure.
The idea is great. There's ways to fill your board with 3/3s.
The mana cost steep, I think, for this.
Very steep. If you don't have a solid activator, 3/3 for 5 mana is a disaster.
Garbage. Yeah, yeah. Okay. A card that is actually pretty cost efficient if you do have the Enabler 2 is, of course, Blackwing Corruptor. And this is basically ghetto Fire Elemental.
Yeah, I mean, it could be considered better because it comes out earlier in the game.
And you are getting the same effect. You're getting the 3 damage there. It's a 5/4. I would counterpoint that with the fact that there's a lot more stuff that can remove a 4 health minion than there is a 5 health. So I would actually prefer to pay 1 more and have a 6/5. But that being said, this is a good card. If you have the cards to enable it, if dragon decks turn out to be a thing and not just this kind of one-off where we pull select cards from it, but if there is a cohesive, maybe in that paladin dragon deck, this would certainly be a must include if that comes to fruition.
Yep, completely agree. People are going to figure out a way to make dragons work. It's going to happen. There's enough dragons now, and it's going to be a completely brand new type of deck, the way that mechs are a new type of deck. So this will likely be an auto-include just because the value of
And the thing I love about dragons is they are mid-range focused as opposed to aggro-focused. Hilariously, if we jump back to Hungry Dragon, again, these are cards that are kind of meant with the idea of going in mid-range and control decks, but of course are going to be pulled out of context and used in aggro decks, which I dislike. So anyway, Blizzard, keep up with the dragons, and please, I want more mid-range and control. I'm tired of getting wrecked. But anyway, So the next card on our list is Volcanic Drake. This made your, was it number 4 or number 3 top?
This was number 4, but the more I think about it, I might have underrated it. I think this card's so good.
Really? Okay. I thought you were going to say you overrated it, but
no.
surprising me again. You make a very strong case for it in a handlock deck.
Yeah, Shadow Flame is the thing that I think will really benefit a deck like this, at least with Warlock, because usually the scenario when you use Shadow Flame, you're killing one of your minions plus 2, 3, 4 minions on the other board, which reduces the cost of this dramatically. Anytime you can get a minion of this size out for so little mana, wipe the board and then drop this, that's so huge. Paladin, Equality Consecrate leads right into this really well.
You know, you said at worst, or, you know, at worst it is a 6-cost 6/4, which is not good. But in a kind of good scenario, you can trade a minion for another minion, and then it's a 4-cost 6/4, which isn't the worst. Again, the 4 health is very tenuous because there is a lot of stuff that can remove that, and there are a lot of things that would love to trade with this card. The biggest of which, I suppose, being Piloted Treader. All right, let's move on to Draconid Crusher.
It did make my list because I think it's going to be bait for a big game hunter. 6 for 6/6 is still acceptable. It's not as good as Boulder Fist, but
it's off by 1 health though. So for this effect, which could turn it into a 9/9 and either do just wreak absolute havoc on the enemy's face or absorb a big game hunter, not the worst.
Yeah, you think of it as 6 mana for a minion that is an absolute must remove. And when you put an absolute must remove out, if it happened to be on turn 6 in kind of a, let's say, a rushy rogue deck that's kind of putting your minion down, or a zoo, then whatever they use on that, it just frees up, gives you information to play huge minions later. It's a must answer if it gets the buff.
Absolutely. And the other thing we should mention is its synergy with Alexstrasza, not necessarily effective synergy, but certainly thematically interesting, with Alexstrasza also being one of the dragons coming in, setting your opponent to 15 health, enabling this to a 9/9. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah. This actually throws into question to date, armor's been strictly better than health, but this kind of toys with that a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. So now getting into some of the legendaries, I believe this is our first one.
Yeah, this is the first one.
Rend Blackhand. He's the first, and he's the worst. Maybe the worst card in the entire set.
I actually don't. There's one legendary I like less than this one.
Be careful. Oh, yeah, it's the one that I saw you unbox the other day. I was playing, and he got Hemet Nessingwary, and I was like, congratulations on the dust.
Yeah, it's a great 400 dust. Actually, this isn't my least favorite legendary in this. I think this card, at first, everyone's reaction was, this is terrible.
And it is.
8/4 is a must answer, which is easy to answer.
Easy answer,
Easy
right.
trade up. It deals with there's more and more legendaries being played that are under 7 attack, which this can deal with. I don't think this card's good. I'm just making for the case that it could be potentially used. Sylvanas is the worst case scenario.
That is so true.
But
I want to point out that this card falls into the same boat as Hemet Nessingwary in the sense that it is overcosted, the effect is too specific, and their butt is just not bootylicious enough. It's only a 4 here, so they just do not have the health to back up any kind of board presence. Don't play this card.
I would have loved to see this as a 4/8 even. I think it might be more playable.
Yeah. And again, the effect, incredibly specific. If you're holding a dragon, not just destroy a minion, which would have been much more acceptable, destroy a legendary minion. It's just making it so situational. This card never stands on its own 2 feet unless all of those are met, and then in that case, yeah, sure, a 7 cost response to a Ragnaros that leaves you with an 8/4. Great,
I guess if you're someone that likes this card, you should start playing Corehound.
Sure, right.
A 9/5 for 7 that doesn't have conditions. I don't know. I will not imagine myself playing that card.
And let's not waste any more time on it. Moving on to Chromaggus. This was my pick, I believe, for number 2. In retrospect, that might have been a bit high, but I'm sticking to my guns. I think it's great, and I want it to work.
I think this card's interesting. I'm not ready to say I think it's slightly better than Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad doesn't see that much play. I'm hesitant to say that it'll replace the 8 mana legendaries that you see commonly today, stuff like Ragnaros, stuff like Tyrion Fordring. I don't see it necessarily replacing those. I think it takes some setup to get value out of. You need to either be able to draw that turn, have something on the board that draws.
Like Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah, but where it succeeds is it's a big body. So if you were to draw this, it's still a good minion to play. It doesn't fall victim to big game. It can still trade with stuff.
Sure, and if it doesn't get removed, then you start seeing additional value out of it. It doesn't get hit by big game hunter, so it can start trading. It can start hitting in the face, and then if it does survive, you will start to see some awesome card draw. And I should point out that it's not going to just draw you an additional card. It's going to copy the one you do draw, so that can either be a gift or a curse, I suppose. But it is certainly a gift in the sense that you're not going to mill yourself with this.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on. We have 2 left, and this card is going to take at least 2 minutes to talk about fully. So Majordomo Executus is 9 cost, 9/7. 7th, you know, it's Corehound stats with 2 more costs, but the effect, which arguably is actually a deterrent for me playing this card, is replace your hero with Ragnaros the Fire Lord. For what we know right now, we're not completely certain, but the hero power is, of course, his
it's 2 mana, deal 8 damage
right.
to a random minion.
But, of course, the worst part about this is it sets your health to 8, and that is just way too low. It is very awkward. Jiraxis setting you to 15, much more beneficial. Jiraxis gives you serious value in the sense that you're healing. You then are going to snowball out of control with summoning your elementals. But with this guy, like, you would have to play this with such impeccable timing for it to work. You would have to be at 1 health. Basically, if you're playing it thinking ahead of time, it's too slow. People are just going to target it, remove it, set you to 8 health. If you're playing it at 2 HP, they're just going to kill you, you know?
Yeah, so I think this card is really only viable on the back of an ice block. Because becoming Ragnaros, surviving a turn, you're going to get a ton of value out of. But if you drop this and you get big gamed, this is a disaster. Like, you're at 8 health, they have a 4/2 on the board.
Unless, of course, you have 1 HP or something crazy like that,
yeah,
or you just ice blocked or whatever the case.
What I love about this card is it's them experimenting with a mechanic that only exists in Jiraxis. Replacing the hero is really cool. Replacing with Ragnaros is awesome. Do I want this to happen to me? No, because you're almost certainly going to die the next turn. But it shows that they're kind of going, maybe not going all out this direction, but it's just something they're exploring more thoroughly, and I like that. I like seeing something that's totally different.
Yeah, and it was actually a very similar scenario to Flame Leviathan with me, where I really liked the idea of that card. Did I play it? Of course not. But certainly I would like to see them iterate more on that kind of idea. And same thing here. You know, I really love, everybody loves the Jiraxis effect. I think that this is a far cry from Jiraxis in both the sense that, I mean, in the best case scenario, you're getting a body out of it and then you're healing for 7, but really you're not doing any of that. I think effectively it's just not going to solve any problems. Yeah. But okay,
Two things I really want to see with this card: emotes and dying scream. Can he beat Jiraxis's dying
Oblivion? Yeah. We'll see what he has to say. Or we won't, because we won't play that card. But Nefarian, there's a card we may play. Now, I have a pretty good argument for this guy going up in the 9 mana contention slot with Ysera, and I will just say straight away that I favor Ysera, but we should let you know the Battlecry effect: add 2 random spells to your hand from your opponent's class. Now, that is the entire class pool, so that is not just the cards they've chosen to put in their deck. And that, for me, is a drawback, because you can draw stuff like Bane of Doom. You can draw stuff like Bestial Wrath.
Shield Slam.
Yeah, right. You can draw cards that just do nothing for you. So in that sense, you're left with an 8/8, 9-cost dragon, whatever. You may have been holding this and gotten some value out of it from a Blackwing Technician or something. But
yeah, one thing that's cool about that card is it's thematic. In terms of the way that this fight worked in Warcraft was how at a certain point in the fight, Nefarian starts like turning people's powers against them, like the mages polymorph themselves, and the warriors are no longer tanks, like they go into berserker stance. So it definitely ties into the lore in a great way. So I love the thought that went into this. 9 mana is way too expensive for this card. For an 8/8, I think this maybe at 7 mana. Would you play this over Dr. Boom? Maybe, maybe not. Dr. Boom's really good.
Dr. Boom is really good, but that would be very good if he was 7 mana. That would be very pushed. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know what you take out and put this in at 9 mana. I just don't see this
definitely
being
not
playable.
Ysera. So Ysera is not really included in that many decks. I still love Ysera, but like, would I rather draw 2 random spells from a class that I'm not playing that could be terrible, or would I rather draw a dream card that I know is going to do work and I'm going to get value of it? The thing about Ysera, of course, is then after that she can also draw you more cards, and she's harder to remove because she can't get big game hunted. She has 12 health. So I think Nefarian, like you said, fantastic thematically, narratively. The art is fantastic. You know, I'm sure he's going to be an awesome encounter in the adventure. Am I going to play him? Probably not, although somebody might.
All right, and we actually kind of went out of order on this one. We saved this one for last because we both kind of conceded that this is, well, one of the best. We both had this in our top 5, possibly the best legendary in the set. There's a lot of hype about it. We're both excited about it. The reducing cost of cards in your hand enables just so much cool stuff.
Right. So initially my first thoughts were like, this is great to double innervate coin to in a ramp deck and then reduce whatever cards I guess you have left in your hand at that point. But that is a very shallow analysis of the card. As Tate pointed out in our top 5 discussion, this enables combos that just straight up do not exist in the game right now. In addition, and despite like a kind of accomplishing that dream, it is also just very effective in a practical sense.
Yeah, you think about it, when anything's reducing the cost of cards, it's kind of like gaining mana. It allows you to make plays and gain tempo that you otherwise wouldn't. So if you play, it's almost a reverse. It's the opposite of overload. You play this, every card in your hand then becomes 1 cheaper, so you can do things you weren't able to do before. If you have 4 cards in your hand, you can almost think of this as you're paying 6 mana to gain 4 mana later. So you're essentially, it's like a 2 mana cost to it. It doesn't quite work out that way in the long run because you may just have burnt mana at the end of turns, but it just creates tools and cards that can come together that otherwise couldn't. It's the same reason I love the reduced cost of dragons. You can bring something out earlier. There's a bunch of big legendaries at 9 mana that you can effectively just you play and then you can't
like
do
Ysera.
anything else.
Ysera has kind of fallen off, but certainly if you were able to play her for 7 mana or on turn 6 with the coin, then yeah, she would be fantastic. You'd be very hard pressed to remove that unless they had a polymorph or something like that.
Yeah, something I love is something as simple as if you put this out and you have Jiraxxus in your hand, that allows you to play Jiraxxus and drop the elemental in the same turn. That's so much value to go Jiraxxus, get a 6/6. And things like that become possible that were previously only possible with the coin. If this guy sits out multiple turns, I just can't wait to see some of the videos that come out when this guy sat on the board for 3 turns and then a mage throws at 2 fireballs for 2 mana and then just completely obliterates someone.
And the best part about that is it's happening in week 1 of Blackrock Mountain, which is unlocking on Thursday. If you haven't pre-ordered it, you still have probably about 12 hours by the time this video goes up. So we will see you in Blackrock Mountain. Once again, I'm James Duggan.
Tate Phoebe.
Thank you so much for joining us here, and for more Hearthstone content, and we will be doing a ton when Blackrock Mountain comes out. Keep it right here on IGN.